had many friends in the Communist Party and in the scientific community, and she respected them. She didn't know much about science herself, but she was in love with the idea of the scientist. She'd known some very clever people. And because they were saying you don't need God, I mean, one of them was J.D. Bernal, who was a British communist, Irish, who was one of the top scientists in Britain, working on X-ray crystallography and the details of matter. Didn't need God. And so Mum would have said, well, if he doesn't think you need God, and he's twice as clever as I am, well then why should I maintain you do? Mm. So for her it was a sort of humility thing. She also felt that religion was very destructive in human history. She was very annoyed during World War II and the lead up to it, how the conservative establishments, the church and stuff, hadn't really stood up to fascism, had almost colluded in Hitler, and with Franco and the fascist revolt in Spain. She felt the church had a lot of blood on its hands. And if these people all believe in God and yet they're creating mayhem politically, maybe we should stand on the other side. And she got involved in the Spanish Republican movement to try and stop Franco. Her heart was with the anti-fascists from the 30s on. As it was with many people here in France. Anais Nin had a lover who was back from the front lines in Republican Spain trying to stop the fascists. So it became a sort of political thing. You were either with the Republican atheists, who were the good guys, they thought, or you were with these right-wing fascists who were like all in bed with the Pope. And I think in her mind, atheism meant being good. Later, when she got more sophisticated and, I mean, they won the war, just. And then she was reading people like Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir and French existentialism, who didn't need God either. They said you can be a moral person, you can be an intelligent person and an existentialist. We have everything we need to be good and virtuous without this God idea, which can be so badly misused. And she remained in that faith up to her death, really. Bless her. In my own spiritual journey, I would, when I went off and discovered Buddhism and had my transpersonal experiences and took LSD and discovered God consciousness, she wasn't having any of it. It was like, oh, Thomas, grow up. You're just being adolescent. It's a phase you're going through. I love her to bits, but we differed on that. And I tried to explain that atheism also has its dark corners, its cubby holes. And when I read my degree in Russian history and European history and discovered Stalin's cruelty and horrors and the horror show that Marxism became in Russia, these so-called atheists like Kaganovich and Stalin, they massacred millions. Because they were clever atheists who were running the Bolshevik party, and those people were ignorant peasants worshipping Jesus or worshipping Islam. And they thought they had the moral right, because they were clever atheists, to mass slaughter these ignorant peasants who were religious people. And I felt that was wrong, But when I said to my mother, please, Mum, I've just read this 3-volume book by Solzhenitsyn about the Gulag. Just have a read and see what you think. Oh, I'm not reading that, it's propaganda. So she refused to look at the evidence, you see, that went against the bubble of atheism equals goodness. But I was looking at it from both sides. Anyway, so I think, there's, of course, it's complicated because Buddhism is itself non-committal on theism or atheism. I think Buddha's strategy, which was very sneaky and clever, was to say, let's suspend judgment on whether there's a God or not, and whatever that means. Let's reach enlightenment first, which is within our capacity, if you follow the virtuous path, and you use your intellect properly. Once you've reached enlightenment, as it's possible on this plane, on this planet at this time in history, then we'll have a God conversation. Let's wait and see, but let's first learn how to walk. It's like a good teacher saying to the baby that's wobbling around on the floor, tell me everything I want to know about God and the universe and everything. Well, hang on, just try and learn to walk first, which is don't lie, don't tell the truth, don't be violent, the eightfold path. And I think I agree with that as a strategy, which is, I don't know ultimately if there's one God or a million gods or no God. Those are mathematical questions that the gods themselves can explain. I think they're all potential attempts to explain the mysteries. And within my mathematical religious book, I've talked about atheism is the one that emphasises the zero. You need the zero to do any proper maths. Okay, so that's that one. The other one you wanted was what was the other one?
Roman Catholics.
Oh yeah, bless, right. Well, again, Roman Catholicism is a huge thing. I've met many amazing Roman Catholics in my life. I've been to the Vatican. I have a reader's ticket to the library. I've gone to Mass many times. I have dear friends who were either brought up or raised Roman Catholic. Some of them are very deep thinkers, I met theologians from the church. When I was in Rome in 1995 at the World Conference on Religion and Peace, there were people like Hans Kung and cardinals. Cardinal Arinze, who's one of the cleverest black African cardinals, I think was there. Pope John Paul II. These people are very deep and very profound. And as a historian, I've studied the history of religions, in detail. And the history of the church is fascinating. Some profound thinkers. I personally don't find Augustine to my taste. I find who's one of the dominant thinkers of Roman Catholicism. I think Augustine made some wrong moves. I'm more with Pelagius. But I respect, for instance, Cardinal Egidio, the guy that was exploring the Kabbalah and the links to Christianity, who was the head of the Augustinian order at the time of Luther, and who was a great Catholic intellectual. I love the Florence Academy of Pico della Mirandola, and which was sponsored by the Medici family, where they were translating the Hermetic texts from ancient languages into Latin. And these were Catholics saying these ancient mysteries of Hermes of ancient Egypt are compatible with Christ's teachings. And they were working on an advanced theology of interfaith peace and reconciliation back in the 1400s. I want to meet them in the afterlife. I want to meet them in heaven and continue the route, because they were profound thinkers. I greatly admire Leonardo da Vinci, who was part of that same circle. He was saying it in art. And he's buried up the road. I've been to his graveside in Amboise. I mean, I deeply revere the Renaissance Catholic intellectuals who were rediscovering ancient wisdom and then updating their Christian faith, looking back at the original text. Erasmus was another. In England we had John Dee, who was a polymathic magus, same kind of thing, reading the Hermetic texts and the Kabbalah, and he was a Catholic Protestant, so whoever was on the throne, he was fine, I'm with that. But, in a sense, my position is to be a Catholic and a Protestant are just two sides of the same coin. It's like a diamond with many facets. Then let's fast forward, come to Thomas Merton, one of my great heroes intellectually, Roman Catholic monk and peace activist in the 20th century. Many great Catholics have been peace activists. My mother's best friend, ironically for an atheist, was Monsignor Bruce Kent, who's a leading Catholic intellectual in England. They were chummy as chalk and cheese. They were always round each other's houses having, planning peace demonstrations and things, because Bruce Kent was the head of CND. And as a Catholic, he thought nuclear weapons are wrong. I agree. And my mother, from a sort of, Protestant atheist perspective had come to the same conclusion. So they were very important in the British peace movement. So I've named loads of Catholics, peace warriors and peace workers. Dorothy Day is another famous name. And, you know, I'm just a little spear carrier to them all. I think there's a conversation going on among leading Catholic intellectuals. I think there's an interesting place where, you see, Meister Eckhart, who's one of the great Catholic theologians, said that God is so immensely incredible that we can't really conceive of God. The best way to go is to go into the via negativa. We can say what God is not. God is not time, because, you know, for all kinds of reasons. God isn't space, because there's always got to be space beyond space, and, you know, space has got to be in something. So what, you know, God isn't just space. God isn't thought, because thoughts come to an end, they come and go, and so on. So we end up like, well, what is God then? It's going back to Nagarjuna's insights, not this, not that, neti. And then Meister Eckhart says, when you do that, then you might meet God, which is the sort of the absolute within all the particulars. Another of my very favourite Catholic thinkers is Nicholas of Cusa, who was a cardinal from Germany in the 15th century, and he thought mathematically. He defined God as the sort of place of infinity where everything meets up, where all the parallel lines meet. And he also said God is a circle whose circumference is infinite and whose centre is everywhere. You know, mathematical thoughts about God. So, I mean, I have tremendous reverence for these people. These people are profound. And I think Jesus was too. I think he was much cleverer than people realise. I don't think he was just a country bumpkin carpenter who could do a few magic tricks. I think he was a sage, a proper rabbi, who'd assimilated the wisdom of his environment, probably spent time in Egypt learning the Hermetic mysteries, the Kabbalah, the Enochian traditions, and had respect for them all. And I think what Jesus was saying is, look, brothers and sisters, let's live as one harmonic radiance. Let's not fuss about which tribe we're from, and let's put the guns, the swords down, and learn the mystery of love. I think that's what he was saying, and I think that voice is still needed today. And I think it's kind of a bit like Buddha said. I think Christ was teaching a strategy on how to get to God consciousness. If we practice the way of love and wisdom properly, both individually and collectively, you know, then we can have the God discussion with the atheists afterwards. You know, I think the Catholics should put the swords down, because there have also been bad Catholics. There was Thomas Torquemada, who ran the Inquisition in Spain and thought torturing people's the way to go. There have been some corrupt popes. There were Catholic crusaders chopping the heads off Muslims because they thought that was the best way to be a Catholic. There were Catholics attacking the Cathars, doing brutal crusades. You know, now I don't agree with any of that. I'm a Protestant over that stuff. But the quintessence of Catholicism is not that. It's the love, it's the being faithful to that all-inclusive vision, and the word means universalism. True Catholic is universal. And I say you can't be a true Catholic unless you've mastered and learned every single one of the boxes. That's the first degree to even get into the place of universalism. So anyway, it's a conversation. It's a conversation, and let it be conducted civilly and non-violently, is what I'm saying. Okay, shall we stop there? Let's have a break. That was fun. I hope that was, useful. And we'll resume.